Autumn of '69, yeah. Let's see. It seemed to me, as I recall, this revolutionary type community organizer named Jim Farrat here, who was a big gay activist, turns out. As far as I know, he sort of was introducing Forcade around from, yeah. Anyway, the next thing you knew, he was this eminence gris from the lunch bucket of America. I mean, the armpit of America, somewhere way out there in among the mesas and the tumbleweeds and cactus. Here came this guy out of a Sergio Leone spaghetti western with a slouch hat and handlebar mustache, being very grim and very intimidating and absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Well, he was definitely not from New York. He was definitely a white hippie from out there, right? And there was this big, there's a cultural divide between, actually the way you could put it is a cultural divide between the yippies who came from New York and the kids that were drawn out in the Midwest to protest with them. And both sides never successfully bridged that divide. Tom was definitely one of the kids from out there. Background with SDS. I guess he was a pot dealer before he, if he was from Arizona, and he smoked pot,
It was easily had here in this state, not so much in the Midwest and that, because it had to be taken to the Midwest from here or anywhere else. But it was readily available. All of us grew up here. We had Hispanic friends who had family in Mexico, and it was pretty common. I think a lot of people got tired of paying $10 for a bag when they could go across Mexico and buy a kilo for 60 bucks. And so, and they weren't checking for that in those days. And so we drive down to Mexico and grab a kilo for 60 bucks and drive back across the border. And then of course, there became quite a demand for pot across the country. And a lot of people got into not only bringing a kilo, but bringing a ton.
I met Tom in '69 when he brought in a big a load of hash, Afghani hash, and me and some of the people in the commune and other friends of mine, we all, back then the dealing scene, it was mostly middlemen in New York City, and they all knew each other, right, from different sections of the city, and they all kind of had their little area that they took care of. And when Tom came in with this load, there was a group of maybe about 10, 15 of us that all knew each other that moved his load. And he made, I think it was close to $2 million.
I guess I went over to the UPS loft to see what was shaking, to see what the underground press syndicate was like. And it was, it was this big loft with all kinds of little tents, like individual tents as you walked in, And Forcade had pot that was really fucking cheap compared to what everybody else was selling it for at the time.
He knew everybody, what everybody was doing in the revolutionary counterculture movement. Instantly, overnight, he knew what everybody was doing and was the authority on whether this was part of the problem or part of the solution. Yeah, he became the arbiter of righteousness more or less overnight.
We were putting out an underground paper at the time, and he approached us. He was heading the underground press syndicate, wanted to start getting copies of our paper and share other copies of other underground papers across the country. We quickly became friends because we were on the same, I guess what we considered it a mission, and had lots of talks about the youth of America, make the changes happen in America. And so we had an open agenda to put in time into trying to change the country that we love so much,
There was like two wings of the yippies, right? There was kind of like the entrepreneurial wing, like Tom, and they usually were dabbling a little bit in the marijuana business. So it was very important for them to, pay their money on time and keep their books straight and not cheat people, right? And then there was the other wing, which was kind of like the steal this book wing, right? Which was into like things like phone phreaking and all kinds of scams and frauds and, you know, getting welfare. And there was actually always a potential, like, conflict between these two. Because what if the people who thought it was cool to rip people off ripped off the people dealing pot? Well, that wouldn't be too cool from, you know, the standpoint of, say, a Tom Forcade.
The first thing I remember about him is he says, well, what do you think about these guys, about Abby and Jerry? I says, oh, they're pretty cool. And he steps back a couple of feet and says, you gotta be kidding, you know. You like those guys? I said, yeah, they seem all right to me. You know, so then he goes into a whole, you know, rap about them and shit. And, you know, he's trying to convince me that they're really not where it's at.
That office was under surveillance 24/7 by undercover narcotics officers. Taking license plates, watching people. We'd take them coffee and request songs, playlists for them on the radio. I mean, we knew they were there. We knew the phone was bugged. We'd ask them what time it was if the clock stopped, and they'd tell us.
Eventually, what we were going to do was we were going to set up an FBI trap in there. We were going to have, like, we were going to build an enclosed area with one door, and it's going to say, like, documents on the door or something, like secret documents and shit. And the idea was when the FBI came in to do their black bag job, they'd go into this particular area, and when they closed the door behind them, they would be unable to leave. So we would have actually trapped an FBI agent.
And I think he had a commitment to, of course, making sure that everybody had the opportunity to do any drug that they want, and was really vehement in his position that adults should not be incarcerated or put in jail for making any choice with any drug in their lives. And of course we agreed, you know, methadone and some drugs were terrible, and we took that to task here in Arizona back in those days. I mean, people were ostracized if they did speed. I mean, and we ran in some pretty tight circles of music industry and concerts and everything else, and so we really didn't have it. It started up, that particular problem that it permeates America today didn't seem to take a foothold back then because those people were ostracized. We knew what it did, and it really didn't take a foothold here in Phoenix like it did in San Francisco and New York. And you know, we came to realize very quickly that's what was the demise of the Haight-Ashbury, is when the thing came from love and sharing and taking LSD and smoking pot to, and so we had conversations about that. And so it really, that was a position that he had. You know, there are just some drugs that you don't do.